Well, you could take Social Security away from people. I think it would be horrendous to do. You could say to the elderly, we're not going to pay for your Medicare or to the poor. That's what Paul Ryan suggests. Actually, to cut Medicaid spending, almost barbaric, if I could use an appropriate word. These are the poorest people in the country. This is about their life and death situation. Take away the veterans' benefits, take away food stamps. I don't think so. Military, yes, we ought to cut the military budget from there another 1.5 percentage points. We ought to be out of these wars completely. This is absurd. It is inexcusable. We have no business being there, and we can save a lot of money as well. So that's where we ought to be making some serious cuts. The interest is going to be there.
Yeah,
and
the assumption is it's like at 1.5 or 2%. If we went to 4 or 5% on interest, we'd be killed.
Well, look at this. We're so close to the knife edge right now.
Yeah.
This is assuming we don't get into one of those death spirals of interest rates compounding the crisis, and then all of a sudden we can't even roll over our debts. You're absolutely right. And then at the top, maybe you could squeeze out a percentage point of, quote, waste, though when the debt commission tried to do it, they actually could hardly come up with anything, so they just put a phony cap on to say we'll just reduce the spending because they couldn't identify the waste, so they just wanted to freeze that budget. But if you do that, I want to add back in a few things, ladies and gentlemen. I'd like us to have an education system that works. I'd like our kids to go to college. I'd like us to face up to the fact that all of this is going to be nothing compared to the devastation of climate change unless we get serious about climate change in this country and stop Exxon and Koch brothers and Koch Industries from this devastating propaganda. But that's going to cost some resources as well. And we have to rebuild our infrastructure and modernize our infrastructure. And it wouldn't hurt if we got back into the business of funding science and technology in this country again. Because that is what made us prosperous. That is what made our country the world leader. And that's how you solve real problems in this world as well. So I figure we need about 24% of GDP in spending to meet the needs of retirees, of poor people, of a cut military, but of a reinvigorated country that is investing in its children and investing in knowledge and investing in science and investing in infrastructure and investing in the environment. That turns us back to the left-hand side. We have to pay for civilization again. And the point is, we are the lowest taxed country of all of the high-income democracies in the world. That's what they don't tell you. Because the other countries pay their way. Right now, we're collecting 15% of GDP in taxes, not even the 18 at the federal level, another 12 or so at state and local, maybe 27% of GDP in taxes. If we got back to a normal cyclical economy, maybe it's 29 or even 30%. But Northern Europe, 40 to 45%, because they're paying for civilization. Now, the point is the rich have so much money and wealth right now that they can pay several percentage points of GNP and they not even notice it. How many yachts do you need, actually? How many houses and mansions do you need in this world? And so, and by the way, you actually can't spend billions of dollars on yourself anyway, because that's a big number for an individual. And the T number for 400 billionaires in this country is really a big number. So my proposal specifically is 1 percentage point of GDP more on the personal income tax by ending the tax breaks at the top and adding one tax bracket for the million and above. Second, a net worth tax for people who have net worth of $5 million or more, because that by itself is more than 100% of GDP, and just a 1 percentage point tax on that would collect another 1% of GDP from the multimillionaires that could easily afford this. Third is a increase of at least 1 percentage point on the companies, because it's an abuse of our companies right now, allowing them to take these tax havens abroad and this phony bookkeeping through transfer pricing to allow them to book their profits abroad and cut their tax rates. This has to end. No amnesties, tax them, because they're doing well, thank you. They're earning a lot of profits. The decisions of how they produce are going to depend on what kind of labor force, what kind of knowledge economy, what kind of infrastructure we can manage in this country, and where their workers are going to want to live as well, whether we're a decent and civilized country for their employees. I'm up to 3 percentage points of GDP. 1 more percentage point can come by tax compliance and by a carbon tax, which can collect a fraction of 1% of GDP and shift us in the right direction to a low-carbon economy, and a financial transactions tax, which has been agreed by Europe, and the Europeans are asking us to tax these quick, short-term transactions in the financial markets, help slow down speculation, and to tax incomes that are otherwise going untaxed. That's 4 percentage points of GDP. If you do that, that doesn't close the deficit entirely, but you get to 24% spending, you get to 22% in taxation. You haven't touched even the middle class and the poor. You if you're in that category, let the rich fight their own battles. Don't defend them on their taxes. That's what I ask you. Don't jump up and say, I'm against taxes. I'm talking about taxes at the top, is what I just said. They can afford it. Let them pay. And it's time we hold them to account for that. And so if you get to that small number, we stabilize and begin to gradually decline the debt-GNP ratio, and we get out of this morass. And that's the basic philosophy that I'm proposing. It's not on any political party's agenda right now. Nobody's doing this kind of arithmetic because both parties are in the decline and phase out of government trajectory. Both parties, ladies and gentlemen, not just the Republican Party, even the president's budget. So this is the truth about our budget arithmetic, but you're not going to hear it from the politicians. They won't say it because their campaign contributors don't want them to say it, and that's what drives our politics right now.
Thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you. We do have time for audience questions, if anybody has the nerve.
I'm wondering what you think about the Occupy movements and what effect, if any, they're going to have on our discussions.
Yeah, well, the last chapter of my book is called The Millennials, and I said it's up to the young people to save this country. And there's a lot of sign that they have optimism, that they have a belief in diversity, which this country desperately needs because we are such a diverse society, and they have faith in government. They don't believe the government is the problem. They believe government should be the solution. And through all of this, they have that confidence of young people. And so I wrote this, of course, before Occupy Wall Street broke out, but I can't say that I'm surprised by it. I'm heartened by it in this early phase, and I'm absolutely heartened by the fact that it's spreading around the country. I want it to focus and hope that it continues to focus on its core message. The core message, the one that I think is both a great motto and a fundamental truth right now, is we are the 99%. They picked up the essence of this, which is that the top ran away with the politics and the economics and the wealth in this country, and they've put their finger on the right fundamental point. And in this sense, this is, I hope, the beginning of an awakening in America that is deep and pervasive across the country. It's very early days. This is a big, noisy country, very hard to get a message across. We do have an attention deficit disorder in our body politic right now, and the television pictures and screens flicker with images so that it's very hard to tell a coherent story in this country and keep a narrative and explain a more complicated message that can be given in a 30-second soundbite. But if it's going to happen, it's going to start this way with tapping into a visceral feeling of unfairness and injustice in the society. I went down to Wall Street last week to have a talk, to meet. You can find a recording of my discussion on YouTube talking about the movement and the challenges. One of the things that I found very heartening and reassuring is that as our double-decker tourist buses came by, which are open at the top, everyone on the top row was standing and cheering and giving the V sign to the kids below. It wasn't what Eric Cantor disgustingly said, that this is a mob. This is not a mob. These are our kids. And they're doing a very, very important and good thing right now. And if they can keep the message, keep the discipline, keep the focus, it's very hard work to do that. But if they do that, they'll open the eyes across this country.
Jeffrey Sachs.
You've been listening to Jeffrey Sachs in conversation with Roy Eisenhardt. This program was recorded at the Herbst Theater in San Francisco on October 11th, 2011.